Hey, well today, how you guys doing? I'm working with a plant called Proboscidea louisianica, and I grew one plant, and I got all of these pods, but it was also like about that big. I've given seeds away. I'm still going to be giving seeds away, but it is Proboscidea louisianica. Its old genus used to be Martinia. Okay, Proboscidea is just I think that's the same genus name as the elephant. And I'll tell you why. These things are all stuck together. Look, if you have some imagination, it looks like elephant tusks. Anyway, Martinia, its old genus, right? That was also the name of a very, very popular pickle in the 1800s. Early 1800s and 1900s, up into what I could find around the World War II Victory Garden era. Because these pods, these woody things that look nasty and mean, at one time, these are together, and you have a really beautiful, tender fruit with a little hook on the end, kind of like a little fuzzy elf shoe or something like that, right? Or a horn. That's why it's sometimes called the unicorn plant. It's also called the devil's claw, obviously, because of this stage. So it was a huge pickling vegetable I found. Martinias. It's spelled Martynias. And that's what people called the pickles. So you can find old recipes. And I'm writing an article on this. I'll provide all of the recipes and also kind of making an amalgamation of these recipes. Because you have like the slow version where you would, lacto ferment these guys pretty much for, 2 weeks to a month, and then soak them in a week vinegar, and then, scald them with really sweet vinegar flavored with mace and cinnamon and ginger and things of that nature, and leave that up to, like, I don't know, maybe some people say a month or so. I guess these guys kept, but in the Victory Garden era, the the recipes would be a lot faster. Like, you could turn around and pickle some of these fruits in a day's time. But the seeds are also edible, and I found through my research that at the stage when the tender pods get a little hard on the inside is when you can actually open them, and these hard seed coats that you see will be a lot softer, and you can roast them at that point and eat them seed coat and all. But what I'm doing to propagate these is just scarifying them a little bit, because they're a desert adapted plant. And I see a little peeking at the seed in there, and I'm dropping it into a mason jar. And on that mason jar, I have a little filter. You could just put a regular lid on it or whatever. I'm going to soak these things for about 12 hours, maybe 6 to 12 hours, and then pop them in some potting soil. But the plant itself, I'm going to put up some pictures of it right here. Was actually grown as an ornamental too. The flowers are beautiful, deep-throated. In Louisianica, the species Louisianica, you have these beautiful yellow track marks that guide bees in, right? And people would grow these and get them in seed catalogs for something unusual to plant in the garden, because it had a stigma that were shaped like lips, and when you touch them, they close. And there's a reason for that. Because when a bee comes by, brushes the bottom lip with its furry back, full of pollen, hopefully, it will close. It'll come down there and get the pollen from the flower, come back out, and not self-pollinate the flower. That's what the thought is, right? And it's also considered a murderous plant, right? So the reason it's not a carnivorous plant is because it traps and kills thousands of insects, like small insects. And it's on its body, just dying, and but they don't derive any nutrition from these insects, so it's considered murderous. And my idea is that maybe since it's a desert adapted plant, right, that why would it expend so much capital on water in places where there's not a lot of water and proteins and all that stuff? There had to have been an extraordinarily great survival advantage. And what I'm thinking is that at one time it was, feasted on by these small insects that just loved their leaves and were attracted to the smell of their leaves. So now we have a plant that is basically covered, and this is just my theory, in the corpses of its ancient enemies. I'm actually going to be collecting some of the insects on its leaves and putting them in isopropyl alcohol and trying my best to identify them, or have someone that knows what they're doing with insects identify them, to see if that's the case. But it's a really prolific vegetable plant, I'll tell you that right now. There's a reason it was in the Victory Garden cookbooks, because, like I said, see all these? I mean, it was piled up to here at one point, and all of those at one time were these really tender fruits. So, I mean, it thrives on neglect, and you put it out there and it just makes a ton of fruits that you can store and pickle. And, and these weren't low-end pickles. These were like the type of pickles that they would talk about them like alongside of celery stuffed with Roquefort in like, memoirs of people that had gone to, Paris to study cooking and things like that. So it was definitely a high-end pickling vegetable. All right. So I think that's pretty cool, but it's also, like, say, in hard times that we're having right now, it would be a great thing to grow, especially with people that don't necessarily have a ton of experience gardening, because it is North American native. Okay. One of the drawbacks, and I think I mentioned that it was primarily grown for its beautiful flowers, is that the glandular hairs come with an odor. The odor, some people describe as, I don't know, like kind of like gym socks soaked in petroleum, or gasoline or something like that. It has a very, very particular odor, right? And it isn't the most ideal thing to smell, but I'll tell you what, wherever I plant this plant, the grasshoppers do not grow. So I actually am planting these things as a guardian against herbivorous insects on the perimeter of my garden. And not only one that I don't have to water so much, but one that'll actually deter, I think, grasshoppers, which is a great problem out here in the semi-desert shrublands of Colorado, in southern Colorado. So yeah, it's a cool plant. I'll be updating you on maybe doing some of these old recipes, but definitely go to pullupyourplants.com. By the time I put this out, at least I'll be close to updating my website with the Proboscidea Louisianica article. And you could find, I will actually have the recipes just spelled out for you. A lot of the times they just weren't that specific. So you're gonna run into a lot of them that are like, soak them in a brine. What does that mean? What kind of brine, how much salt, things like that. So some would be specific about the amount of salt, others would not. Others would just leave it. They'll say just dump a vinegar syrup on them. What does that mean? So I have I've kind of compiled a lot of the old recipes, and I'll have them cited so you can follow them word for word if you'd like to. But I'll have a lot about this plant coming up soon on pullupyourplants.com. So beautiful seed pod, beautiful plant, wild, evil looking. Anyway, hope you like it. Take care. Bye-bye.